You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Folks, Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are these things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show for 16 years and 2,500 episodes has been bringing you some of the most amazing minds, stories, and journeys across the paradigm of the world. Today, we have an amazing young man. We're going to get into it with his book called Tennessee Thunder, A Tale of Two Armies, a second book in a series that we'll get into, out February 8th, 2023. Daniel F. Korn joins us on the show. We're going to be talking about his book, his insights, and some of the historical things we can learn from him. As a child, Dan Korn loved to explore the region around his childhood home and has seen so much of the French and Indian War and the War of 1812. This led to a passion for history, especially America's story, and particularly the American Civil War. As an undergraduate student in college, while on a college field trip to Civil War battlefields, he experienced the vision which inspired Dan to take a crack at writing, and Dan followed his passions and aspirations through his academic career as a high school and college teacher of history, which also inspired him to become a Revolutionary War and Civil War reenactor. Tennessee Thunder is his second book. Welcome to the show, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
I am excellent. It's glad to have you. Give us .coms. Where do you want people to find out more about you on the interwebs?
They can go on, my website is AYRpresents.com. That stands for A Yankee Rebel Presents. And that is my website. It's directly attached to, linked to Amazon and several others. They'll see the books on there. They'll see some videos. They'll see photographs of everything. My first one, Dawn's Gray Steel, was actually featured on the big billboard in Times Square last November. It was up there for a week. And so we just keep trucking along, trying to do our thing here.
All right. Sounds good then. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's in the second book in your series?
The book is a sequel to some extent, but it's also a standalone book. It follows two armies. All of my writing is about in Tennessee. The Army of the Mississippi, the Army of the Tennessee and the Army of Tennessee. They're two separate armies. One is Confederate. Yep, one is Confederate, one is a Union. The Union named their armies after rivers. The Confederates named their armies after geographic regions. Okay, that's why you have the Army of Northern Virginia, for example, and so on, and the Army of the Potomac, which was a Union army. But these two armies were led by two very, very different personalities. For the Union forces, you had William Stark Rosecrans, who was a genius in many ways. The man was a very skilled inventor. He had come up with different types of inventions involving kerosene. And but unfortunately for himself, he had also experienced an explosion. And as a result of that, he wore a beard in order to cover the burn scars on his face.
Oh, wow.
But yeah. And he also had one other slight problem. He stuttered. When he got upset, he would start to stutter very, very strongly, until the point where he practically sounded like Donald Duck. So, but he was really smart, a very, very good leader. His men adored him. And he was also a converted Catholic. He had joined the Catholic faith, which was very unusual back then, particularly in the military. His brother was the Bishop of Cincinnati, Ohio. He too was also a convert. And so you've got, that's one kind of personality leading this army. Very, very excitable, nervous, but absolutely brilliant guy. Braxton Bragg, on the other hand, is the Confederate leader, and Braxton Bragg couldn't get along with anybody to save his life, practically. Here's a guy that in the pre-war era, had been the assistant commander of his military post, the quartermaster for that military post, and the commander for the artillery on that post. As the commander of the artillery on that post, he gave himself, the quartermaster, a requisition for supplies for his artillery unit, and he turned himself down.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he took that, rewrote it, presented it to himself as the acting commanding officer on the post, and turned himself down again. And when his boss showed up, when the commander of the post came back and saw all this, he just looked at him and said, Brax, you're the only man I know who can argue with himself and lose the argument.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious.
But he had a situation too. When his mother was pregnant with him, she was sexually attacked by a free black, and she killed the man. And she was charged with murder, but she won her acquittal. She was acquitted of that. But you can't tell me that all the turmoil that she experienced did not go directly right into him in the womb.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So he was quite possibly bipolar. We do know that he had some depression issues, and as a result of that, he had a very, very short fuse and a very hard time getting along with his subordinates. So you've got two very different personalities commanding these two armies. Very different.
Wow. There you go. So, what prompted you to get interested in history and study history?
As a child, you might recall a television series called The Wonderful World of Disney.
Yeah.
Okay. And Disney was actually the originator of the miniseries. They would do all these different programs, like Davy Crockett, for example, that he would spread out over a course of so many weeks. When in reality, what he was doing was taking a movie and just turning it into short segments.
Yeah.
One of the ones that and I loved them. I mean, I watched every one of them, constantly. Every Sunday night, I was parked in front of that TV set watching that stuff. And one of the episodes happened to be Johnny Shiloh. The so-called drummer boy of Shiloh, which was a true story. Kevin Cochran portrayed him in the movie, but he was a real person. He was a young man, 10 years old, who ran away to join his hometown regiment and fought alongside them. They cut a gun down to the point where he could actually hold it and handle it.
Oh, wow.
And in the course of the Battle of Chickamauga, he shot a Confederate colonel right off his horse.
Oh, wow.
He spent some time in a POW, as a POW, but he stayed in the military. And when he finally retired as a brigadier general, he was the longest serving soldier in the entire Federal Army.
Wow.
So, but that got me going. And I learned to read very young, very young. My mom was always saying I was reading the cartoons, comic strips before I was even in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And so my family encouraged my love of reading. And at that time, when I was just growing up, was when the centennial of the Civil War was taking place. And of course, Bruce Catton's, all his books, I read every one of them. And I just the more I read of this stuff, the more I got into it, and the more I got into it, and I eventually realized I wanted to become a teacher. It was a choice between teaching music or teaching history, and I became a history teacher. My music teacher high school was kind of upset with me about that because he had really, really worked me over to train my voice and to do all of these different things with me, and as he called me, his Frankenstein. He said, I took a quiet, introverted kid and turned him into a raging stage presence, and now he's rewarding me by going off to teach history. But as I said to him, you never taught me how to play a piano.
Oh,
so couldn't very well do that. But I went to college, and while I was there, one of the courses I took was on the Civil War, which was a summer course. And the professor, a brilliant guy, was a great storyteller. And the last week of the class, we actually went and toured Civil War battlefields. And this is where things got kind of interesting. because we were at one of them in particular, a place called the Wilderness, which is in Virginia, which was the first battle between Grant and Lee. And it was a very dry time. Virginia was experiencing a drought, and the woods caught fire while they were fighting the battles. And a lot of the soldiers were burned up in the fires.
Oh, wow.
So while I'm walking through a particular section, and I happened to be by myself at that point, and I know what time it was because there was a temperature thing at the local visitor center there at the park, 90 degrees, 11 o'clock in the morning, not a cloud in the sky, beautiful day, except it was warm. And all of a sudden, I'm standing there, t-shirts and shorts, and it feels like someone had just poured a bucket of ice cold water right down my back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there is nobody there. It's just me.
Wow.
And it scared me, obviously. And I got caught up with the rest of the group and kind of hung with the group the rest of the day and made sure I told my teachers about it. He kind of laughed it off. But when I got home and told my parents about it, particularly my dad, he insisted that I tell my grandmother about this, his mom, the next time I saw her. So I did at her house. And when I did, I told her the story. She went and pulled out the old family genealogy Bible.
No.
And proceeded to go through that book in front of me until she found the right page, and then shoved the book in front of me and stabbed it with her finger and says, "Is that where you were?" And on the page was listed an ancestor who had joined the Federal Army and fought in all these battles as part of the Army of the Potomac. And the last entry is MIA, May 4th through 6th, 1864, Battle of the Wilderness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is wild, man.
Yeah. Talk about being touched from the grave.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an inspiration with that. And I had just finished reading Killer Angels, which was Michael Shara's book, Jeff Shara's book. And I was fascinated by the way he wrote it. And I decided I wanted to take a crack at this. And that, between the two of them, that is what inspired me to start writing in the first place. And out of that eventually came Dawn's Gray Steel. And then out of that will eventually come Tennessee Thunder.
There you go. And tell us about Dawn's Great Steel. Let's profile that a little bit. That's kind of the first in the series. Dawn's Gray Steel, a novel about Shiloh, April 5th through 8th, 1862.
Again, all of my stories are, each chapter is a different person. Okay. And they go back and forth between the two sides. And the two main protagonists in this particular story are Albert Sidney Johnson for the Confederates and Ulysses S. Grant for the Union. And you got Sherman in there, William Sherman, Pierre Beauregard, Nathan Bedford Forrest. These are all characters in the story. And one of the things that has been counted on by a number of people is how accurate the story is. But as I tell people, one of the things about being a reenactor was that I have done these battles as a reenactor. I did Shiloh, the 150th anniversary one. And the only thing, different from what it would be for a real battle is we don't have the bullets whizzing by our head. But otherwise, it's the same thing. Those cannons and everything and all that, and it's noisy, it's loud, people go. So, but it's the idea is that Grant has been kicking their butt all the way across Tennessee at this point. Fort Donelson, Fort Henry, and all that, and he's doing really, really well. And it really sticks in Johnson's craw because Johnson had basically kicked Grant out of the Army, out of the pre-war Army. Grant had been a paymaster in California, and he was not a drunk, by the way. People always keep saying, "Oh, Grant was a drunk." No, he was not. He was a binge drinker. He could go for months and months and months and never touch a drop of alcohol. And then if he drank one drink, he usually drank a whole bottle. So that was a problem. What had happened was that he was the only the only married man on his post in the officers' corps, and he missed his family terribly. And when the other guys would go out to carouse and hang out and everything like that, he sat back in his quarters and drank. and he lost a payroll. He lost a payroll.
Oh, wow.
As a result of that, he was cashiered. He was given a choice by Johnson: either accept a court martial, in which case you'll probably lose and get, kicked out of the Army with a dishonorable discharge, or you can resign your post, your commission, and go home. And of course, Grant took the resignation part. One of the people who helped him to get home was one of his very, very closest friends. That was a guy by the name of Pete Longstreet, who turned out to become Robert E. Lee's right-hand man in the Civil War. But the two of them were very, very close. In fact, Grant was introduced to his wife by Longstreet when they were both stationed in St. Louis. And by the same thing, Longstreet was Grant's best man for his wedding. So there's all these connections with these guys. And anyway, but when they come to the fight, Johnson is bound and determined, I'm going to get this guy. I'm tired of him making me look like an idiot. I'm going to get him. And he launches this battle plan, which is absolutely not suited for Tennessee. It's based on Napoleon's battle plan for Waterloo.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Which, of course, Waterloo, if you ever Flanders Fields, wide open meadows and everything. Where they're fighting is the Tennessee River. And there's ravines and creeks and swamps and everything else all over the place. And it's just a mess. And you have two very unorganized armies. Neither one of them were really that well trained. And it's basically a street fight between two rival gangs, so to speak. And each chapter is told by a different person experiencing what is happening in the course of the fighting in the battle.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And you base the characters on any certain thing?
They're based on themselves. I do a ton of research. So that people realize that, hey, he's a teacher, and one of the things he does is he knows how to do the research. And I have been all over those battlefields, so I know exactly what happened, where it happened, and who it happened with. And all I had to do was come up with the dialogue. And knowing the character and how they thought, that was relatively easy for me to do. So each storyline follows that. And we've been pretty successful with that. A lot of people have commented on the story that they can't believe how realistic and accurate it are. And you better have it right when it comes to historians and reenactors, because they're going to tear it apart otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, even though it's a historical fiction, it can sometimes sometimes be a little off. So there you go. Let me ask you this. We talked about some of the different things. Being a writer, has that helped you as a history teacher to inspire students? Do you think it made you a better teacher?
Well, absolutely. Because they know that, for one thing. They've seen the books, and most of them have read them. For whatever reasons. I actually taught a dedicated Civil War course at the high school level, which we never had any problem filling up. In fact, we had waiting lists for kids to get in to take it. And so, yeah, it definitely has made a difference in how I approached the material. That my expectations are quite high with my students were in terms of writing and doing research. They knew that, hey, he's going to know if it's right or if it's wrong. And so I think that helps inspire them to do a better job. One of the things I'm most proud of, we talk about legacies in our business, is my legacy is that there are over 50 young men and women who are now teaching history or working in a history-related field who are former students of mine. And 5 of them are at my last school. Well, 5 young women who are teachers, elementary school. They're not history teachers, but they're elementary schools. We're all at the same, my last school here. I can't think of a better legacy or recommendation than that, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. There you go. Great endorsement.
Yeah.
So you do both the Revolutionary War and Civil War reenacting. How are they different? Like, that seems obvious, but in your words, I guess. Did you hear me on that one?
Reenacting. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What the difference between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War reenacting?
Well, there's a lot of things that are different. There's a lot of things that are different. You can have exactly the same commands, and they mean entirely different things. That was something I have to learn. I had to realize when I started doing Civil War reenactments that a specific command meant an entirely different thing with the Civil War as opposed to doing it with the Revolutionary War. Of course, the weapons are similar, but they're not the same. Uniforms are much different. It's much more pageantry with the American Revolution than it is with the Civil War because you've got very, very colorful uniforms in many cases. But it's also Revolutionary War reenacting is also more family orientated. We had in our particular unit 4 generations of that were doing things. Yeah. Whereas Civil War is very, very male orientated, much more so. Although there are women obviously doing it, but it's definitely much more male orientated, and it's not quite as relaxed in terms of doing events. So it's also normally larger, but it's interesting. We have a Revolutionary War reenactment that's going to be taking place about an hour's drive from me this weekend, and there'll be 400, 500, 600 reenactors out there portraying redcoats and patriots doing their thing this weekend. Yep.
Yeah, that would be really interesting, huh?
Yep, and I used to do that particular event and everything as a redcoat. My son and I both. So yeah, that was kind of our family. That was our thing. We were both reenactors together, and that was a good father and son activity.
That was there you go. Yeah, that's got to be a good activity for
now.
Now
his kids are growing up to watch it. We take them to see it, and his boys, and we'll see if one of them someday becomes a reenactor or not. We'll find out.
There you go. Might be a future in that for the kids and all that good stuff. So this is really interesting. And why do you particularly focus on Tennessee? I mean, it seems obvious, but I think people want to hear that from your words.
The second most number of battles in the war were fought in Tennessee.
Oh, really?
Everyone hears about Virginia. Okay, everybody hears about Virginia. Robert E. Lee, Army of Northern Virginia, Army of the Potomac. But the second most number of battles was fought in Tennessee. And in reality, the war was won in the West because the Union took control of the rivers in the West. And once they did that, they cut off the commerce for the South. They could no longer ship into the South from up north or across the river. When they took control of the Mississippi, they cut the Confederacy in half. It's just a matter of time. How long can they hold out? And that was basically what it was. And the only army who was really having great success up until Gettysburg was the army for the South was the Army of Northern Virginia. And after that, after Gettysburg, the road starts going down for them as far as that's concerned. But that's part of the reason why I always felt that so much attention was being paid to the East and not enough to the quote unquote West side of the war. And the more I read about it, then that's where Grant got started. That's where Sherman got started. There were other leaders that were involved out West. So I always felt that the better Union generals were in the West to start the war, and the better Confederate generals were in the East to start the war. And eventually, time was going to bring them all together, and then we would see what would happen.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's right.
That's a real important thing to have go down. When you look at all these different things, what are you most proud of as your teacher and your legacy in that regard?
Well, I mentioned earlier about the fact that I have such a large number of former students who are now teachers and teaching history. That's important to me. Just when you see the light bulb click on in a kid's eyes, and you realize that they got it, and they come back later when they're not your students anymore. And I run into these people all the time, and they tell me that the one class that they will always remember is mine.
Wow.
Yeah, things like that. And
That's
they
pretty
remember
powerful.
who I am. I might not necessarily remember who they are, but they remember who I am.
Yeah.
And that means a lot to me. It's not the money. People say, "Oh, you get paid." Nah, I said, "No, the paycheck's not that good." But altering and changing people's lives for the better, and teaching them to be good, productive citizens.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's been really cool about all of this.
There you
And
go.
seeing it happen with so many of these kids.
That's the great thing about teachers. My mom was a teacher
probably
for 20, 25 years. My sister was a teacher.
okay.
The impact you guys have on people's lives. I flunked out of high school a lot of classes that I knew I didn't need to take because I only needed like 26 credits out of 52. I'm like, I'm not going to take these other classes. I was a dumb kid. My parents are poor. I wasn't going to Harvard. So I knew a Pell Grant was in my future. And so I flunked a lot of classes on purpose because I was like, I'm not going to do the work. But I really enjoyed my teachers. And some of those teachers were kind of upset with me, but they didn't realize they had some of the best impact on me in learning from them because of the quality of the teaching they did and the excitement they gave to the topics, the engagement they gave. They weren't just up there going, Bueller, Bueller, Bueller,
Right. Yep.
There were teachers that made that brought to life the material, and they made it exciting and interesting and cool. And they were passionate and they cared. And those are the teachers that I remember, even though I flunked some of their classes. I revered them as teachers and people, and so that's it's a really great beauty, and we need to put more value into teachers. We need to pay them more too. Let's start less wars and pay more teachers.
Yeah. One of my favorite lessons. Yeah. One of my favorite lessons is we would do the Boston Massacre, and I would bring in all the uniform coats and stuff, tell the kids bring a crazy hat to wear, and we would go outside and we would literally recreate the Boston Massacre.
Oh, really?
The things that and I'd film it and everything, and the kids would get to watch it afterwards and see how silly some things get and how realistic other things were. And then we would go back in the classroom, and I would throw up two pictures. One, of course, is Paul Revere's picture, and the other one was drawn by an actual eyewitness. And I hand the kids a Venn diagram. I said, "Okay, compare and contrast the two pictures, and keep in mind what you just saw when you were outside doing this." And that's when they realize, wow, Revere's stuff is really wrong.
Yeah,
it was done that way on purpose, because he was trying to elicit an emotional response. And I said, okay, now think about that in comparison to today. How often do you see with the media trying to portray certain events totally differently than the way that they actually have occurred?
There you go.
And what do you call that? Propaganda. And they get it. And that's the kind of thing that I do in a classroom.
Yeah.
Is I'm always trying to get them to understand how the past relates to today.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah. It's one thing we always say on the Chris Voss Show. The one thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history. Thereby we go round and round. And so learning from history is important because we can help avoid the repeating of it if we're smart and wise. But, we have this problem where we're humans, and so it's kind of an issue. But that's the beauty of history.
We're human, all right.
You can learn from what's going on, and you can see the mistakes we made, the errors, and technically we should avoid them. But again, the one thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history.
Well, and that's part of what I put into the books too, is the idea that these are humans.
Yep.
These aren't abstracts. These are flesh and blood people who bled, pain, whatever, felt things, and reacted based upon the stuff that happened to them. And that gets the story across even more so because it humanizes the events. They're not just a name anymore.
Yeah.
It's something that really happened, and people get it and they understand it because they can feel it and see it in their mind.
Yeah.
So
and yeah, these are, people suffered real loss. People suffered uh, pain, agony, death. Some people can look at events and, oh, it's great. We won this war. We fought this battle and we won the battle and stuff. But there's real blood, sweat, and tears. There's real people who
yeah,
die on the
I
battlefield.
mean, in Tennessee Thunder, I talk about one of the chapters is Ben Helms. That's
Mhm.
Lincoln's brother-in-law,
Oh, really? Wow.
and he was killed at Chickamauga. Yeah, Lincoln
Hmm.
had offered him a position in the government prior to the war, trying to keep him from going on the Confederate side, and he refused, and he ended up getting killed at this battle. And
Wow.
his wife, who was Mary Lincoln's sister, ended up moving into the White House to live with them for a while. And
Oh,
there was
wow.
all this controversy about a Confederate in the White House kind of thing, and
Oh.
so on.
Mm.
After that, yep.
Can't be having that.
Yep.
So this is really interesting. I remember when I was a child, around 10, 11, or 12, there was a gentleman in my neighborhood in California, SoCal, and he loved studying the Civil War battles. And so he would go to Gettysburg and different places, and he'd collect the bullets, and
Sure.
both the spent ones that actually probably hit somebody, or the ones that never, they just landed and they're fully.
Mhm.
And I remember looking at those, and he would show them to me, because what they would do is when the bullets hit something, they would smash up and they would create a bigger hole coming out the other
Yep.
side. And so he'd tell me, imagine that bullet going into a body, and then it hits, a bone or something, and it mushrooms out, and then it exits out the other side with probably your kidney or something
Yep.
attached to
Mhm.
it. And I remember seeing that and having that tactile experience of that bullet, seeing those bullets and being like, wow, this is really something. This was. And then I think he told me a story, or I picked up the story somewhere from class, about how back in those days when they would, you got shot in the arm, they just amputate, right there in the battlefield. And so he told me a story of,
Depending on what it hit. Yep.
yeah, and so there was a guy who he got his guts blown open, and his guts were hanging out. He was holding his guts in, and he looked down and went,
Mhm.
well, if they're going to amputate me right here, I lose everything down there below. That's kind of, fun for reproduction purposes. And so he went and hid so that he could just die, because he didn't want. They eventually found him and saved him, and turns out they didn't amputate him below the thing. But kind of craziness back then, what you would have to go through.
If you read the Civil War stories about Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain at Gettysburg,
Hmm.
later on in the war, he was shot with a bullet went in on one side of his body and came out the other side of his body,
Wow.
and they thought he was going to die. And in fact,
Mhm.
Grant gave him a battlefield promotion to a brigadier general because they thought he was going to die. But he survived and came back. And but one of the things that happened to him was that was gone. That ability to have reproductive source was gone. But he was
Mhm.
alive, and he was able to
Mhm.
communicate and work. And he eventually is the general that will accept the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox Courthouse.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, those kinds of stories were the prosthetic leg was invented during the Civil War. The true prosthetic leg by a
Oh,
North
wow.
Carolinian who had lost a leg during the war.
Mhm.
So, all kinds of stories. Mary Walker, she's very prominent in my book, Tennessee Thunder. First female surgeon in the United States military,
Oh, wow.
battlefield surgeon.
There you go.
She was at
And so,
Chickamauga, and she served honorably. She is the only woman, the only woman that won the Medal of Honor.
oh, wow.
So,
There you go.
okay,
Now, was that the Medal
all
of
these different
Honor
people.
overall, or just for that?
The
Award?
Congressional Medal of Honor.
Congressional Medal of Honor. There you go.
Well, that's when they started it. They started the Congressional Medal of Honor during the American Civil War.
Mm.
And she's still to this day is the only woman to ever win it.
Wow. There you go. Well, congratulations. Did they have female nurses in the Civil War, or was it mostly men?
You had Dorothea Dix, who was head of the nursing corps, who started it. They called her the Dragon Lady.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her prime subordinates was, you've got her and Clara Barton, who started the Red Cross, but started out as a nurse with Dorothea Dix and was on the battlefield at Antietam, taking care of wounded men and everything at the Battle of Antietam. She had a soldier get shot while she was holding a soldier, nursing a soldier, shot and killed right in her arms.
Wow.
Well, she was attending to him. Yeah.
Wow. That would be something.
She went on to start the Red Cross and also Graves. Yeah. I mean, there are so many stories like that. So many like that. Yeah. You were talking about the weapons and everything. I used to be allowed to bring my, as I call them, my toys to school. And as long as the kids could actually hold them, as long as I kept my hand on it. And they all commented on how heavy these things are.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, you carry this around all over the place. I go, yep, like that. And they go, oh my God.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah, you're talking, it's the weight of a milk gallon.
Yeah.
Take 11 pounds.
I
11
mean,
pounds.
Feeling those bullets.
But yeah, a lot of fun though. A lot of fun.
Feeling those bullets and the guns and stuff, like the muskets and shit. You're just like, wow, okay. All that stuff that goes on. So there you go. Well, as we go out, give people a final pitch out to pick up your book and find out more from you about all that good stuff.
Yeah, like I said, Tennessee Thunder is the second one, which is the one we've been talking about mostly. Dawn's Gray Steel was the first one. That's about Shiloh. Tennessee Thunder is about the battles of Stones River and Chickamauga. It's a much bigger book because of that. My website is www.ayankeerebelpresents or AYRpresents.com. And you can there's links to Amazon. The books are on Amazon. They're also on Barnes and Noble as well. And, Dawn's Gray Steel is hopefully going to become a movie. We'll see. We've completed this. We've completed the script and the director's cut for it. And hopefully things will happen with that. But the time will tell. Time will tell.
Wow. Time will tell. So we'll look forward to that then. Sounds like an awesome time. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been fun to have you on and relive some of these wonderful memories from my childhood and yours.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for tuning in. Order up his books wherever fine books are sold. The latest in the series, Tennessee Thunder, A Tale of Two Armies, out February 8th, 2023. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.